And well, the 2020 and highlights aren't really two phrases that fall together very easily, are they? And we all know what we've all been through. Although actually, do we really appreciate what each other's been through? And I think one of the things that's come out of this is trying to be aware of others' situations. So I hope you're all well. I hope your organisations and companies are doing okay, and yeah, hang on in there. Really today it's just about thanking you. And we mean it every year, but I mean it even more this year, because the fact that our supporters have stuck with us through this last few months is humbling, really. And it means such a lot, because it means as a charity we can go out there and support those who need it most. So highlights of the year. Well, yeah, where do you start? Like most of you, I suspect, in March, the world changed for us. As one of my colleagues puts it so delightfully, on March the 16th, we ran out of the office with our pants on fire. And like I suspect all of your organisations, we flipped overnight into being, I was going to say into being a different organisation. Being an organisation that works in a different way, and my thanks to everybody, particularly colleagues who helped us do that. And in a way, that's one of the first highlights, that we were forced, as I suspect many of you were, to make changes and improve the way we work. Some things that we'd muttered about for years, we had to just do it overnight. And I think we're actually a better organisation for it. I mean, the thought a year ago of asking my colleagues to join me on a Zoom conference would have just been, it just wouldn't have worked. They wouldn't have wanted to do it. Now, we know we can work in a different way. So in a way, that's sort of a highlight. I think there are good things that have come out of this year, aren't they? And I'm sure you've got personal things and whatever challenges you've had, there are good things to come out of this year. And one of those for myself has been, despite the fact it's been insanely busy, just a chance to reflect on my own values. And I know lots of us have done that, but also as an organisation to reflect on our values. And we've been doing that recently. And when we look at our values, values are a thing that organisations list, all the usual words, caring and enabling and so on. But actually, in our case, we really do mean them. And looking at them again really made me really appreciate once again what we've got here collectively. And when I say we, I don't just mean the people you're looking at here, the staff. I mean us collectively, all of you. Because if you look at our values, they talk about being passionate about supporting the people, wildlife and landscape of the Dales. Well, yeah, we are still passionate about that. There's also a neat one in there which says we're creative. It says something like, we welcome challenges and face them creatively and with an entrepreneurial spirit. Well, we've certainly had a challenge, and it's a real challenge to us to be creative. So actually touching base with those values really re-inspired me and I hope other staff. Blimey, we need to be, because there's a lot of challenges out there. I mean, we all already knew the needs of this area were great, but COVID has highlighted them. And if you look down at the sort of areas we deal with, my goodness, there's some challenges there now for the local area. Around economy, particularly young people and employment and all that work we've always done around supporting young people and into apprenticeships. This connection with nature that a lot of people have now realised is so important. The stuff we've always known. And again, perhaps a highlight in there as well, because as you're probably aware, the Dales in between the strict lockdown periods has actually been overwhelmed with visitors. And if you look at that, something's happened there that we've been trying to make happen for years, which is, if you look at that demographic, it's completely different to what it was before. Suddenly, we've got a lot of young people coming here. We've got a lot of people from different communities. The diversity of visitors has changed almost overnight. So there's a real opportunity there for us to engage with those people and help them connect with nature. And we know all the benefits of that. Local communities need support. My goodness, you know, they're under real pressure, aren't they? And it was really pleasing that we were able to flip overnight into more direct support. Working with the Two Ridings Foundation, we set up a coronavirus support fund, really small grants, you know, mostly just a few £100 to local community groups. And to date, we've given out something like £50,000. That's not just money. There's a lot more support behind that. And those community groups are at the heart of how this area and these communities will come out of this. And then, of course, the big issues don't go away. You know, climate change certainly ain't gone away. And compared with coronavirus, long term, the effects are going to be much more drastic on this area. So there's a lot of work to do out there. Through this time, you know, we've tried to do what we can. We've done the coronavirus grants. We've carried on as far as we can doing our bread and butter stuff, particularly around people. The outreach work's carried on where we can in new ways, turned a lot more to virtual events and supporting people online. And where we can, actually working with people face to face, often in much smaller groups, even one-to-ones. But, you know, that can be real help for individuals. Schools work, once we were able to get back, we did quite a bit of online work. Once we were able to get back, we were surprised, actually. We sort of thought schools would be overwhelmed with just trying to cope. But there was a real welcome for our staff. And one of my colleagues, Anthea, I'll quote from her. She said, "It feels like teachers that would normally play safe have suddenly seen the value of being outside. For example, one said, 'You can't bounce off the walls if there are no walls.'" So again, there's a real realization of that value in connection with nature. And essentially, we're a bit overwhelmed with trying to cope with that and trying to cope with all the changing regulations. But that's certainly something we're going to keep going. And Rosie will talk more about working with young people. We've carried on planting trees, actually not planting trees over the summer, but working on woodland creation. We've got this Together for Trees campaign. We're wanting to plant another 100,000 over the next 2 years. As I always say, when I say we plant these trees, we physically don't plant them. These are on other people's land. And Darren will talk later about as a landowner, how we've worked with him. And 40,000 trees this winter. A really good bit of news on woodlands. Was it recent? We won a public vote. I don't think I've ever won a public vote before. And thanks to everybody who pushed our vote around and voted for us. It was the European Outdoor Conservation Association, EOCA, had a public vote. And we won the funding, and it's for a plastic-free woodlands project. Because if I'm really honest, over the last 23 years, we've helped have 1.5 million trees planted in the Dales, which I'm really proud of. What I'm actually frankly ashamed of is that we've helped to stick 1.5 million plastic tree tubes out there. And, you know, that's an issue that's got to change. And I'm glad to say we're sort of helping to lead the way on that, along with colleagues at Friends of the Dales and other local groups. So the Dales lead the way. I say we won that public vote. I don't think it's gone to a recount. Nobody's challenged it legally. So I think we've actually got the money. So that's great. That's a highlight. A couple of other highlights. One is that Shanaz joined us as an ambassador, and she'll be speaking later. I can't tell you how thrilled we are about that. I'll let Mike introduce Shanaz later. My own contact with you actually came through that fantastic programme that was shown through lockdown of your walks in the Dales, which I don't know if anybody saw it. And I hate to say this, but if a programme comes on about the Dales, I tend not to bother watching it because I think, oh yeah, I've seen it always before. That was something really different. And there was just something during lockdown about the serenity and sense of peace and engagement through that program that really touched me. So we're really thrilled for Shanaz to join us, and look forward to hearing from you. But the last highlight is actually the biggest one for me, and that's thanks to all of you. And it's the fact that our supporters have stuck with us through this, amazingly, which is brilliant financially. And we always need that, Dosh. So, please, if you want to donate, give us more today and in the future. I make no bones about that. Without that money, we can't do the work. But it's more than that, actually. It's more about the fact that I've always seen this as a genuine collective effort. This isn't YDMT doing things for people. This is YDMT being part of that Dales community and helping that community into the future, the people, landscape and wildlife of the Dales. And I very much see all of you as part of that same community. We're all working together. YDMT, if you like, is just a tool, a sort of conduit to make good things happen. So it's just brilliant that you've had the faith to continue supporting us. It means as a charity, we're doing okay. There's lots of charities out there really struggling. Do support them as well, please. We're doing okay. It's going to be a challenging future, but we actually feel really ambitious because we know the need out there. We know our own values and we want to carry on making a difference. So it's as simple as that, really. I just wanted to say thank you. I think I'm just about stuck to time, Sarah. I was trying to avoid your gaze there. If we were in a room at Coniston, she'd have started coughing very loudly. But yeah, so thank you all. And I think I'll hand back to Mike. Is that right, Mike?
Thanks for that, David. Firstly, I must apologise. Open Reach are digging up the road outside here, so it's getting a little bit noisy and upsetting my dog that's sat behind me as well.
But Mike, you sat on a hillside.
Yes, not in St Helens, David. I think one thing that you mentioned there was quite interesting for me was you talking about community, and I had the opportunity to work on the Coronavirus Community Fund that, as you say, was started with the Two Ridings Foundation, which was really centred in Craven, and then obviously we brought on the Cumbria Community Fund as well to expand it across the Dales, and how that went from being a fund which was specifically focused on making sure that vulnerable people get food and medicine, and we support volunteers, to then becoming something that encompassed the whole of the days to help people recover from the pandemic, which I think is something that we're going to be really, really actively involved in the future, isn't it, David? With kind of green recovery, planting more trees, getting more people out into the Dales, which is really important. Which is a nice little segue to Shanaz, to be honest with you, because like you say, I was quite touched by the BBC Walk series that she did as well, and I remember me and yourself had a text conversation, didn't we, about we must approach Shanaz to become one of our ambassadors to join Paul Rose and Alistair Humphreys and Chris.
I think that was in the first 5 minutes of the first programme. I think one of us sent the other a text saying, "This is fantastic. We've got to get hold of this person."
Absolutely, and just a real brilliant way of showcasing what is a fantastic landscape and how we interact with it. So I suppose it's over to Shanaz now to kind of explain her love of the landscape and also what she is working on at the moment.
Hi everyone, I'm really, really pleased to be here, and it's a real privilege to be asked to be an ambassador for the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust. You probably realise why a little bit more as I talk about some of my work as an artist, but also a role that I'm playing, which is a recent role as chair of Bradford City of Culture bid. And I'm trying to get the phrase a rural city to become very much part of the language as part of that bid as well. So I think all of our kind of focus and our drive for the bid is to make sure that we actually connect with the urban with the rural. I'm going to give everybody a little bit of a snapshot of my work as an artist, because I absolutely, I have to say, when I was asked to screen test for the series, I jumped at it because it's like all of my loves all combined into one job. How often do you get the opportunity to do something where you are both artist, presenter, and you're outdoors in the landscape? It couldn't have been a better gig really for me. But I'm going to start with kind of giving you a bit of a background of me as an artist. I am a Yorkshire lass, born and brought up, Keighley girl. So the moors and the Dales are like my backyard. And it's where I've grown up, stomping in the mud, out in the rain. If it's raining, hailstones, snow, that's my favorite time. So winter, I absolutely love. I have to be honest, I went for a walk, I think a couple of weeks ago, where my friend and I started a walk at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were up on Addingham Moor. We got halfway to the Apostle Stones and the heavens opened. So if anybody's gone walking up on the moors, you can be totally soaking wet on one side and totally dry on the other. And then when you turn around and walk back, you're suddenly soaked head to foot. But it was the best thing, and it was the best experience. So as a Yorkshire girl, the landscape is my home. As somebody who's grown up in Bradford, the term rural city has a real connotation. My work as an artist, I did my foundation course at Bradford College, which is world renowned, obviously, because we also trained David Hockney, and I'm totally gonna, give Bradford total credit for that. But I also, as an artist, I work with technology, I work with site specific. Site specific basically means where the work isn't in the gallery, it's out in the city, it's in a mill, it's in a street, it's in someone's home, it's in a National Trust property, it's out in the Yorkshire Dales. I'll show you a piece of work called Meander, which has done that. It's basically, A, goes to the audience, B, takes the audience to spaces and places where they might not always go to. I'm going to screen share just to kind of give you a quick snapshot of that work. And I always love doing this because you never quite know if it's going to work. Okay, I think everybody can see this. I have a co-practice that I share with an artist called Steve Manthorpe, and we have been working together since 2004. And I also have a cross-art form practice, so I work within visual art, contemporary art, site-specific, outdoor, theatre and tech. So basically, whatever the idea is, we then look at what is the art form in order to deliver that. And the walk with the BBC was along those lines. What do we want to create? How do we want to do this? We want to create something that is basically, you can be sat in your living room, but it's like you are out in the landscape on that walk with that person. And that was the aim, and that was the desire for that show. So just a quick whistle stop of the work that I've done. I'm just going to click into, I think, one of my favorite pieces. This is called Substop, and it's a piece, as you can see, it's not a very inspiring piece of architecture. It's just a 50s bus shelter in a little village called Newton-under-Rosebery, and under Rosebery is Rosebery Topping, so up, towards the Tees Valley in the northeast. And it was the home of Captain Cook. That's what we claimed anyway. And so, but he was born there. And what we wanted to do was create an artwork which looked like it was a bus shelter from the bottom of the ocean, and it had been picked up and just put on this street. And it was, and the magic of it was that you saw the water, you heard the fish, it felt like it had been picked up and just put in the middle of, from the ocean suddenly onto the earth. Part of the idea for this, and there's always been like a theme in my work where trying to kind of explore climate change in a humorous way, but in a quite an engaging way for young people, as well as for those people who are new to how climate change, the environment, our impact on it, how we use materials, how we dispose of materials, how we walk through it, everything, how that has an impact. And one of the things that we wanted to do with this was look at if marine life basically amalgamated with everything that is in the oceans, what would that look like? What could that be like? So we had fish that had wellies rather than fins. We had fish that had headphones that had been thrown into the ocean, and so the marine life actually becomes more than biological. It becomes part of whatever is found in the ocean. So kind of beginning to think a bit like that. The audience will be able to walk straight up to it. They could touch it, they could hear it. It was very much felt like these fish were sat in that bus shelter waiting for whatever bus was going to come their way. Just to kind of give you I'm just going to whiz through some of these. I do a lot of site-specific outdoor work. As I said, I love working in the winter, and I love walking in the winter as well. I'm going to see if this opens up for you. Just going to open that one up first. This was a project that I did, again, up in the Northeast. I love the Northeast, which was called Window. And we worked with a primary school where we recreated a nativity as a stained glass window that we then wanted to put in the park, suspended like there was a magical cathedral outside. And I always, when I'm in the landscape, it's the majesty of it. It's how it's empowering and awe-inspiring at the same time. I'm going to see there's a rather blurry photo that I'm going to share with you, which shows you the window in the midst of winter. I think it was the 18th of December in 2010 when we did this piece of work, but it really does look like a window suspended, you know, in the middle of this park. And that was the aim, to kind of create a magic of Christmas, magic of the story of Christmas, but outdoors. You know, my work takes me across different countries. It takes me into different landscapes. It takes me indoors, outdoors. A piece of work that we commissioned, that we decided was going to be a slow art piece of work, which talks to the slow television of the Yorkshire Walks, something that is more contemplative, something that is more reflective. But we basically wanted to walk the Yorkshire Dales wearing cameras on our heads. So this is like almost like a precursor for the BBC series. And the piece of work was called Meander. And meander meaning, you know, it's what we do when we go on a walk. You know, we get slightly lost. Nowadays, GPS, when you follow it, when you record your route, you're able to see where you go wrong. I also like seeing other people's routes where people have gone down down a bit of a rabbit hole, gone, hang on a minute, we can't get down that hill, we need to come back. Then they come back. I love seeing people's mistakes when I see somebody's routes on any of the trail finders apps or anything else that I tend to use. So this piece of work was basically a precursor. You can see that this was done in 2011. The map that you're seeing there basically is the walks that have happened. So, you know, the start and end points, so everywhere where you can see a blue trail, those walks have been done. My colleague and I, Steve and I, did the first walk. But then we would leave the kit, which would be the GoPro cameras, so people wore them on the head rather than have a selfie stick. That's, you know, we're talking 9 years later. Way back then, it was wearing it yourself. We were asking people to walk in pairs, and we were asking them to pick up the kit, put it on, do the walk, and then deliver the kit at their destination at a given delivery point. We would then pick it up, download the footage, and then create a 2-screen video that could then be watched online on YouTube from anyone, anywhere in the world. You know, I think some of my favorite films, I think one of my favorite films actually was a family. It was a mum and dad and 2 kids walking. And at one point, the mum and dad gave the headphones to the children. So the children, you know, the 2 boys just ran off. And you could hear the 2 boys, and you could you heard all the talking, you heard all the conversation along, you know, very much along the lines of the BBC Yorkshire Walks. And I'm laughing because the children, basically the younger boy said to his older brother, Dad's really upset Mum. And the older brother was, yeah, he always does that, doesn't he? And the young one, what did he say this time? And the older boy went, well, Mum said, you told me this was a flat walk. And then Dad said to Mum, yeah, it is for me and the boys, but not for you, obviously. And the boys were like, oops. And Mum got cross. So you could see while the boys were talking that Mum had kind of gone in one direction, Dad had gone in the other direction, and suddenly it was a socially distanced walk before we knew what socially distanced meant in the current context. So I think this piece of work is still not finished, because as you can see, pick up and drop off points, walks still need to be done. So it would be something that I would, you know, love to see complete, but a slow art work is exactly that. It can take years to complete. Technology has now, you know, advanced, and it's ahead of us. So we'd probably look at kind of people not wearing them on the head so much now, but I still would like those to be worn on the body. I'll talk a little bit more about the Yorkshire Walks, but I just wanted to talk about a piece of work that's very close to my heart. And it's not something that I've done, but it's done by an artist called Katie Patterson. I don't know how many people know about this work, but it's 100 trees that are being planted over, have been planted over, I think, 2 years. And each piece of work, I'm just going to scroll down so you can see, each piece of work, each tree will create a text, a book, once it is a fully grown tree. So the idea is that these trees, this forest of the future, gives us the paper to print 100 books, 100 years into the future. So this was done in 2014, and it's ongoing. And if you can have a look, please do. It's called the Future Library. And I think it's something, when David was talking about the tree planting that we are doing, and also the plastic tubes, because I have seen some of those as I've been on my walks and things, and wondering how can we replace those and protect trees and saplings as we do that. But I would love it if people could actually, even from this talk, take away just getting to know this piece of work and getting to know this project. I'm going to stop screen sharing at this point. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the BBC Yorkshire Walks. Obviously, I've talked about Meander as a project and something that we did 9 years ago, and almost like as a precursor. When I was speaking to the producers about the show, what we wanted absolutely was to be able to show detail in the landscape, but also that point of view that we very rarely see, which drone cameras have allowed us to see, is how tiny and minuscule we actually are when we're in the landscape. So that view that we see from above, the bird's eye view, that's what we look like to birds. Can you imagine? So when we see birds and we see, you know, creatures who are quite small but majestic when they're in the sky, we must look quite insignificant to them actually within the scale of the landscape. And I think that is something very much worth us remembering. When we look at how our legacy on the landscape, how we interact, climate change, the environment, that perspective, I think for me, was one of my favorite points, to being able to see that size, that scale, and then to be able to see the detail of a mushroom at the base of a tree. And I think that was my favorite bit about that whole show. Of course, going on the walks, being by myself, and that is the truth of it. There was a crew of 5 people who were about a mile behind me. And I'm going to confess this, I often off-roaded, meaning would go off, you know, a bit like I was talking about, you know, when I love seeing when people go off route and then they come back and you see them going off route, the crew would see me suddenly go off and go, hang on a minute, she's decided to create her own trail or find her own trail. And I'd suddenly, you know, I'd have people running, trying to catch up to where I was, or go on radios to say, we're going to lose you, we're going to lose you. It's quite funny. I did very much feel like it was my own walk. I think the walk that we did from Brunswick Bay to Whitby, the coastal walk, when you see the footage on the cliffs, at one point, I love going to the edge of the landscape, especially if I'm on a coast. I love getting as close as possible because I want to see, you know, that meeting of earth and water. And I had to, again, the crew were behind, and they could see from the drone camera what I was up to, and they were like, turn around now, please, don't go any further. So but the landscape does that to me. Being outdoors does that to me. You kind of become younger, you become more curious, you become more playful, I find, when I'm out there. I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about why I was so pleased to be asked to be an ambassador for the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust. My parents are from a place in Pakistan called Kashmir, which is quite a large majority of the South Asian community in Bradford. Kashmir, for those of you who know, is a valley area. It is mountainous, it is hilly, it is full of rivers. The Mangla Dam is one of the largest reservoirs in that continent. And the people who have moved to Bradford are from villages and from rural life. So they know that landscape, they are familiar with that landscape. I think that's very much in the DNA for a lot of us, is in our DNA for those who were born and brought up in Bradford, those who are first generation, you know, to our immigrant parents. I take my mum and dad out for walks. My dad's 84 now, so taking him out for a walk is quite difficult because he's got arthritic knees, but he still insists, and I'll take him on a flat walk, unlike what, you know, the father did for his wife in as part of our meander walk. But I remember taking my dad out to Malham Cove. This was about 20, I think it was 20 years ago. Oh, yeah, 20 years ago, I took my dad, his uncle, who's sadly no longer with us, and my mum and my nephew out to Malham for a walk. And just seeing, and they were, my mum and my great uncle were wearing a shalwar kameez, and my dad was in his flat cap. He's a proper Yorkshireman, absolute proper Yorkshireman. And just seeing them in the landscape talking about how it reminded them of where they had grown up. I swear to you, my father's story of going to school as a child, when it started off when we were younger, my dad used to walk barefoot a mile there, a mile back, because he was that poor. Then as we got older, I'm sure the mileage got more. I'm sure by the time I was in my teens, it was like a 4 mile or 5 mile round trip, barefoot all the way. My dad's a great storyteller. He's absolutely charming. But my memory of that trip and the way they were talking about the landscape, the similarity in the landscapes, the difference in the colour of the earth, how they grew up foraging, how they grew up knowing what the plants were of the region that they had grown up in the landscape that they had grown up in. And I realised then that I didn't know enough about the landscape that I had grown up in, about the foraging that I can do. I mean, believe me, I do know now. But that's when I realized, and that's when I decided that if I didn't have that, how could I then pass that on to my daughter? How could I pass that on to my children? Because this is their landscape as much as it is mine. When I go to Kashmir with my parents, they then tell me, and they then take me to where they, you know, what they used to do, where they used to do it. They also demonstrate and talk to me about the difference that has happened over 20 years on that landscape, that a road has been built, that a desire line, a pathway has disappeared because a road has been built. And now we no longer have, you know, desire lines because people are walking less, because they don't need to walk because they have cars. My father, in our family, my father used to rear camels. For me, that's unthinkable. I've seen camels on TV or in zoos, or, you know, and for my father to have reared them and know that the behavior, you know, what the milk tastes like, what the meat tastes like, that to me is like mind-blowing. And my father went on holiday in Morocco with his friends, and it was like a boys' holiday. He was in his 70s, and it was really funny. Nobody wants to see a picture of your dad with his mates in a jacuzzi, I'm telling you. But my favorite photo was my dad with a camel. And that has stayed with him. So for me, my being asked to be an ambassador for the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust carries all of that with it. The walks that I did as part of the BBC Yorkshire Walks carried that with it. You know, the history, our parents' history, where we are born, how we interact with everything around us, that is carried with us. So I think that was with me on the walks. And you know, I would often, I'm an urban girl as well as a rural girl. You know, I grew up in the town, I grew up in the city. So I had to learn about the landscape. And I'm hoping that this is a reciprocal relationship with the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust, that I'm able to learn and give, and also be able to learn in, you know, and be able to be taught as well. I'm an artist, so if I can cook up a crazy idea with you guys, that would be amazing. I'd be seriously excited, both as BD25, just to say, as a city of culture bid, you know, land art is massive. We're a rural city. Let's just think about the work we could make. But also when we think about the Neolithic sites that we are so lucky to have on our doorstep. I could carry on talking. I'm a talker, as you all know. So I'm going to leave it at that. So if people have got questions, I'm here till the end of the session to have a chat with you all. But thank you.
Thanks, Shanaz. Really, really appreciate that. I think one of the things that struck me there was when you're talking about that kind of connection with landscape through your family. That's one of the reasons why I work for YDMT, is because my dad took me up to the Dales when I was 8 years old. Okay, he disappeared off to the pub most nights, leaving me on my own. But it's that kind of, going down the river on your own when you're 8, 9 years old, connecting with just a different part of the world to where you live and yeah, I'm quite inspired by what you said there. And I know that we've been talking already about perhaps, doing some walks between our supporter woods. So we've got, is it 23 supporter woods, I think, David, now, 23, 24, and we've already been talking about perhaps a route that connects all those supporter woods up and perhaps some kind of project around that. But yeah, really excited about the future, and thank you for talking to us.
And my absolute pleasure. I can confess that it was my birthday last Wednesday, and the thing that I desperately needed to do was get back to the ocean. So I was on Ronswick Bay with my daughter on a wet, windy Wednesday afternoon, and it was amazing. Just what I needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks from me, Shanaz. I mean, there's so much in what you said that resonates with me and all of us. And I mean, just a couple of quick thoughts. When we started with sort of what we call outreach work, I don't like that phrase, by the way. We need when we started working with communities in particularly West Yorkshire. I think the bit that surprised me is totally two-way. I personally, and we have got as much from that connection with other communities culturally in lots of other ways, that it's a win-win, really. It's great stuff. But also that, family and background. I think most people on this call will have some incident or person they could tell you about that connected you with the Dales or with nature. That in most of our lives has been something. For me, it was a school trip to the Dales, but I've bored people about that story many times, but it was a life-changing thing. And we see that life-changing happening with so many of the people we work with. And it might be somebody you just have contact with for a day or a couple of hours. But I think we're going to hear more from Rosie in a minute, who actually goes out there and changes lives rather than me just talking about it. Mike, I don't know if you're going to take questions. I think I saw Melanie put a hand up. It's a bit difficult. Are people all off screen or muted? I don't know how you want to handle this. You're happy to take questions, Shanaz? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, David. I'll just jump in there. I think if it's all right with you, Shanaz, we'll save some questions for the end, and then we can see
right.
time-wise, if that's okay. That'd be fab. I think Lindsay's going to keep an eye on the questions there and let us know at the end. Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks, Shanaz. It's fantastic to hear everything. Obviously, you've spoken a lot there about sort of connection with the landscape, and obviously there's a lot of family connections there, and here at YDMT it's really important that we do connect people with the landscape, with nature, with our environment from a young age. Over the past, I don't know how many years, 20 years, we've worked with more than 14,000 young people, helping to give them a connection with nature, with the landscape on their doorstep, to help improve health and well-being, develop skills, all sorts of huge impacts that work has. And it's not just, a day out in the Dales or in the woods, but it's the practical action that these young people get involved with as well. So helping us to create habitats, plant trees, and establish projects in their own communities and their own areas as well. So with that in mind, I'll pass over to Rosie, who's our outreach officer. She's going to tell us a bit more about her role with the Trust, very varied role with the Trust, and she'll be having a chat with Benji as well, who's with us. Who's been part of our youth work for a couple of years now, and is also one of our young ambassadors. We're glad to have him on board. So I'll pass over to you, Rosie. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I think I'll speak a little bit about the outreach and community work that we do, and then then I'm going to interview Benji, and he can tell you a bit about what we do and what Benji you do. So yeah, I'll get going. So I joined YDMT in 2018, straight out of university as an outreach trainee. I'm now a full-time member of staff working to get diverse and underrepresented groups out into the Yorkshire Dales. Growing up around here, it was a privilege, but I've had to watch so many of my peers move away for work. So the opportunity to work here and remain rooted in my community has been incredible. Working in the Dales has allowed me to get to know our landscape, our heritage and industry in a different way, which has meant a huge amount to me. Everyone should have access to this area, and it's through our work at YDMT that we make it happen. As an organisation, we support people in making lasting and meaningful connections to the Dales. We go on walks, we go lambing, we visit caves. The aim is to be alongside people as they discover, and I think as Shanaz and Sarah and David and Michael have always said, and it's not just discovering, it's rediscovering with people their connection and a love for this area. So over the past 2 years, I don't think I've had 2 days at work the same. From planting trees in the freezing sleet to fixing a 400-year-old dry stone wall. But one experience that will always stay with me is the first time that I went lambing. So we take groups out. We take groups out on doing all these adventures, but it impacts me hugely as well. So I was sent off ahead of the group to the top of the field to find the farmer. We was late meeting the group and we were starting to get a bit worried. I don't mind running up the foothills of Ingleborough. The views are really good. I found our farmer kneeling over a ewe that was about to give birth. It was the first time that we'd met, and straight away he got me holding down the sheep next to him as she struggled to get her lamb out. It was absolutely incredible. Our group found us just as the lamb was born. It was almost biblical. So began probably the most memorable few weeks of my life. But it wasn't just the lambing, it was the stories that would be told as we walked up and down the slopes of Ingleborough. Lots of the refugees that we work with come from farming backgrounds, and the questions and the stories and the comparisons of farming practices that were shared and debated was incredible. Lambing is a vehicle for storytelling. The rituals of birth, the songs that you sing to newborn animals, the blessings that you give them, the conversations and the relationships that were built in that month. I'll never forget them. It was like nothing I've ever experienced. So, as well as being alongside people as they reconnect with nature, we also work with younger groups, often discovering nature for the first time. So this leads us on to interview Benji. So I'll give a brief background of kind of what it is that we do. So part of that is the Youth Forum. The Youth Forum is led by young people aged 11 to 24 and supports them in practical conservation and environmental social action. They come up with what they do and they work out how we do it. We meet about once a month to support our team of 15 to develop the skills and confidence to lead environmental change locally and nationally. We celebrate our achievements at the end of the year at our Youth Summit, a weekend away in Malham, with over 60 young people in attendance, led by young people for young people. Many of our groups come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and we always begin with a trip out to the Dales, especially for our young people. We might do fire lighting, farm visits, walks, tree planting, and we also run schemes like the John Muir Award, so you can get involved in that. The impact that our work has on young people is astounding. Watching people's confidence grow from their first trip out with us to a few months down the line when they're leading the group up a fell, pointing out all the fungi that they've learned about in the last few months. It's amazing what access to nature can do. And what's so great about the way that we work is that once the trips are done, once the visits are done, we can invite people to our summit, we can invite people to our youth forum. There's a next step in the journey. So all of that energy and that love and that excitement that they've experienced over the past few months, they can channel it into something. We can invite people to join our youth forum and they can then get involved in the campaigns that they'd like to run, or meeting other people who are also really passionate about the youth forum, about the environment. So young people are the future. Connecting young people with nature and the environment is vital if we have any hope for resisting the worst impacts of climate change. We need young people to understand why nature is so important. We need them to be confident in their knowledge of what needs to happen to bring about change. But more than anything, we need our young people to be empowered and able to make that change happen. I think that's a good place to stop and to introduce Benji. So Benji, I think me and you started working with YDMT at around the same time. I think your group was one of the first groups that I took out, and we did the John Muir Award. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, we did that. I think we did 4 days with you, doing different things, and then there were 4 days that were with YDMT. But yeah, I remember first time I think met you was at Ostwick Woods, I think, and we were doing a bit of a forest school and some games and things there, and then we did the tree planting in the rain, which was absolutely freezing. Numb fingers, couldn't see, and I think it was one of those things where when you're doing it, you think, "Oh, this is terrible," but afterwards you realise how fun it actually was to do it. And we've also done we did citizen science at Malm Tarn, and we did, what was the other one?
Farming. We've done some farming.
Oh yeah, the farm we went to in, is it Keyston? Yeah, where we learned about all the farming, and we went to, and we actually held some lambs, didn't we? And had a good look around, and it was that was a really interesting day. I think that was one of my favourites. And then I went to the youth summit at Malm Tarn last October, I think it was. Did loads of great stuff there. So different talks with people like the head of Cars Billington, and a local fam, and a girl who set up a charity, an environmental charity. We did also did a bat walk, photography workshop. I think that was with Lindsay. We did orienteering. We did lots of games about the environment and the climate, and we did a recycled catwalk where we had to get dressed up in loads of recycling and strut along the room dressed in this recycling. Some of it fell off, but that was fun.
Yeah. And who won that, Benji? Who won that one?
Yeah.
And Benji won it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and
why? Yeah. Sorry. Carry on, Benji. I'll let you.
And through that, I got invited to the youth forum, and that was fun. Obviously, with because it hasn't been happening through lockdown, I haven't done as much stuff as was originally planned for this year, but I've still enjoyed the days that I've done. And then recently Mike asked me to be a young ambassador for YDMT, and I've become one of those. Yeah.
That's brilliant. What do you think you've gained from it? You know, like, we've had a lot of fun. I think I've had a great time as much as anybody else, but what do you think you've gained from it all?
I think self-confidence, so being able to do this, sort of talk about it all in front of people, new knowledge about things, new skills, so like all like in the forest at school that we did at Ostwick, and then we did one at this youth summit as well. So we did the all different skills like that, and found out stuff about farming, the farm, and tree planting. I've never done tree planting before, so because I don't have I'm from Keighley, so, and getting out into Dales, we don't have a garden, So being able to get out into the Dales and do activities and things, I do the Dales Young Rangers as well, and it's important to be able to get out and have that space. And I'm a fell runner as well. I've been doing that for 8.5 years now, and so before lockdown races and things, so it was that's sort of something else. I've been able to get out and really enjoy the Yorkshire Dales and its views and landscapes. Yeah, and of course new friends as well from the youth forum and from the John Muir group.
Yeah, so all of that sounds quite nice. What about your biggest challenge? What you found most challenging about it all?
Well, I think the most challenging day would be the tree planting in the cold and things. But yeah, that was a good day, but it was still a very big challenge.
There's a fine line, isn't there, between challenging and rewarding, and freezing cold and being happy. So what are your plans next? What are your plans for the future? Well,
eventually I'd like to get a job doing something like this eventually when I'm older, but more sooner. I'd like to just sort of get back out after lockdown finishes and when groups can start up again and continue with this and with the youth forum and young rangers and all sorts of activities like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was really nice. I know that I needed it when we first met again as the youth forum. We met again outside, and we met in Settle in the grounds of Victoria Hall, and just being outside again and being with people who are really passionate made me really happy. I hadn't realised how important it was to my well-being. I don't know if that's what you felt like as well.
Yeah, it was just nice to be able to finally get back to the group, to be able to see people start doing things, because we're planning the youth takeover and social media that's happening at the moment, and so being able to get back and talk to people and be able to do it after being locked down for so long was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else, Benji, that you'd like to talk about?
Don't think so. I can't. Well, I've had a nice time doing all the things with YDMT, and I hope to continue it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Should we hand back to Sarah and Mike?
Right. Okay.
Thank you very much, Benji.
Can I all give you a round of applause?
Sorry, there was a question for Benji in the chat. I thought now would be a good time to ask him. Karen Cowley, one of our trustees, asks, what do your school friends think of your experiences with YDMT? And do you think they would like to join in? Are they a bit envious of what you're doing?
Well, I'm home educated, and the John Muir group was actually a home education group. So it was a group of everyone who was home educated. And I do have a lot of friends who are also home educated, and a lot of them do like being outdoors. And some of them do the group as well. So yeah, so it's nice. And so also being home educated means that you're not stuck to a strict timetable of when you have to sort of sit down and do something. So and before lockdown, you could do a lot in the Dales. So even if you just go sitting somewhere and just learning out there, going for a walk, learning about all the different plants and trees. So, yeah, so I think being home educated allows me to get out more and do that sort of thing, which is something I really enjoy.
Yeah, Benji, I think you're a credit to our youth forum. I think a lot of people find it hard coming from school environments and thinking it's not the coolest to be part of, to be really keen about the environment. I think that you and the others, it's a nice mentor system as well, being like, well, you know, I have got friends who are interested. I've got friends that are passionate about all of this stuff. I think that's really nice. I think you're a credit.
Thank you.
You definitely are. Thank you for that, Benji and Rosie. It's lovely to hear from you both, and obviously we can take a few more questions. If anyone has any other questions, do keep popping them in the chat there, and we'll get to some more at the end. We are overrunning a little bit, but hopefully you can all stick with us. It's lovely to hear from all our speakers and to hear the passion there. And Benji, I think, and Rosie, I think what stood out for me there was you talking about meeting up at Victoria Hall at the end of the summer. When a few of us may have had the opportunity to meet outdoors with people, and I know that feeling of, I think we all probably felt a bit giddy. I remember meeting up with Chris and Abby from Cooper King in the summer to go and pick some wildflowers, and you know, that feeling of being outside, being with people from work or colleagues or friends, and it's just, yeah, I think after the year we've all had, hopefully we've all had that at least one nice experience to kind of be outdoors. And yeah, really great to hear from you both. Thank you. And you know, obviously Benji, glad to have you involved as a young ambassador, and hopefully you'll be involved with us for a long time. There is a blog on our website from Benji if you want to find out a little bit more. I don't know if Lindsay or Mike have the link. If you can pop that in the chat box, that would be fab. Yeah, as David said earlier on, huge thank you to everybody for your support. It's thanks to you that we can work with people like Benji and, you know, get groups out into the Dales. It's, you know, thanks to you that we're able to work together and create habitat, support our environment. We've got loads of tree planting coming up, as David said, aiming to plant about 40,000 trees this winter to reach our Together for Trees target. The woodlands you've helped us create over the past few years are growing strong and thriving, and hopefully the trees that we get in the ground this winter will do the same. I'm going to hand over to Mike. Hopefully we've got Darren on the line somewhere. I'll pass over to you, Mike, to chat more about our woodlands.
Yeah, so obviously everybody, we've got, I think it's around about 23 supporter woodlands now. I've been part of the trust for a couple of years, and one of my first jobs when I was at the trust was to do some tree planting with Darren at Low Branthwaite. So I went to see, you were talking there, Sarah, about getting back outdoors and being really giddy. Well, I was quite giddy when I went out to see Darren a few weeks ago to have a look at how the woodland is. And it looks like Darren is showing us how good the woodland is at the moment. But I did a little interview with him, which hopefully I'll be able to screen share now. And yeah, touch wood, it works. Okay. This is always the fun bit, isn't it? Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen there.
I think we're all jealous that Darren's out there on a real hillside by the look of it.
Oh, can you hear me there?
This is Low Branthwaite's, which is just outside of Sedbergh, and we planted an area of about 7 acres. I'm trying to think when it was. January 2018 is when we started planting, and then since then we've obviously tried to. We've done a bit of additional planting 12 months ago. Well, no, sorry, actually 8 months ago, which was just a few areas where some of the trees hadn't been planted. The majority of the trees here are from that initial planting a year and a half ago. The total number then was 2,000 trees that went in roughly. And then otherwise, since the planting, what we've tried to do also is to help people come to visit the woodland. There's been a path cut in, which is basically just with a lawnmower. So we've just cut the grass shorter. We've got a bench just at the top of this hill, which part of that is to encourage visitors who come to stay at Low Branthwaite's at the bed and breakfast. But you know, also importantly from supporters and other visitors who can then come to the land. So there's actually a couple of footpaths running through the land. And the nice thing we've started to see is that we get quite a lot of people sitting on the bench. We've seen a lot of people walking around the path. So I think it's really helped with actually people coming and seeing the woodland and and understanding what's going on. And then that path runs off right up into the fell now, and that picks up a footpath that goes across to Dent, or you can go the other way.
Sorry, everyone. I've just got a couple of messages here that we're having some issues with the video quality on that. So I'm going to pop the video in the chat, which I've just done now, which you'll be able to see afterwards. And yeah, many apologies for that. Darren is in his woodland. He's actually with us now in his woodland, which is nice. I'm really passionate about this woodland because, as I say, I've been there planting some trees myself, and the difference in this woodland from just from last, it's probably about 2 years old now, Darren, would we say? And I think the difference already is absolutely phenomenal, especially in terms of the wildlife and the birds that are there as well. Darren, I just wondered if you could start with kind of explaining, how you came to planting 2,200 trees at Low Branthwaite.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we've got you.
Yeah. So let me know if it's too windy. It didn't seem like it was too windy, and it was a nice day, so I thought it was probably a good idea to actually come out so you could see it. So I was trying to think about this. I saw it was a question, and I was trying to think, how did I first hear about Millennium Trust? And I think it was through our neighbours, and they had a wall rebuilt many years ago, like the fell wall, sort of right at the top of the hill here. And also there's a field barn, which you may not be able to see, directly behind the sun. And I think that was a very old Millennium Trust project. And when I say, I think it was, a lot of years ago. And so I think it was at that time I sort of first heard of Millennium Trust. And then I guess I just heard about the woodland grants, and it was at the same time that we had started thinking about splitting our land apart. So previously this was all sheep grazed, and you can see where the trees are here. I'm not sure if you can see further down, you'll see where there isn't trees. So there's sort of 7 acres and 7 acres, and it used to be the whole lot was sheep grazed, and then there's a wall in the middle that we had decided, well, that's quite a nice place to split the land up, and we'll look at planting trees on the upper part of the land. But yes, I think I was just aware of Millennium Trust, and I think then it happened that I guess probably one of my earlier conversations with Carol, and Carol came along to have a look at the land, and we just started discussing what the options were, and that's it really. I suppose it just progressed from there, and then the great thing was that there was a grant available. Carol thought it was a good project. And we just progressed, and I think it probably took from the starting point of discussing it, probably in the summer, and then by that winter, and we would start planting.
Darren, how easy was the actual application process? Because you hear stories of farmers having to fill in, and landowners having to fill in, 20 different forms, and an inch thick. How easy was it to apply for a grant?
It was pretty easy. I think it was. I've just gone through the process again, so we're looking at some more planting, and I think it's a two-page form, heavily supported by Carol. So yeah, it was very easy, not challenging in the slightest.
I know that obviously you were out planting, and a few people from YDMT were, but you also had a lot of help from Sedbergh School, which is just around the corner. I think most people would have balked at having 20, 30 teenage kids on their land. How did you find that?
It was good. It was. I really honestly had no idea how. I think there was parts of me that was slightly dubious to begin with, thinking that in terms of what to expect, but they were good. It was we probably had more hands than we needed, so it meant that they could come for an hour or two. We would probably I think we were planting 200 trees every visit, so we had 2,000 trees to get through, and it took around that long, about 10 weeks, and I think and it was nice. Actually doing the project that way allowed us a bit of time to think about it. I don't think we had, or certainly I didn't have a completely clear plan on where every tree was going to go, and I suppose that you don't need to have it down to that detail, but we had sort of 2,000 trees here, and then suddenly you've got to start thinking about, well, what's going where, and I think actually having it split over a few weeks worked quite nicely for that. But the kids generally were very good. They there was obviously quite a mix in there. There was some that worked very, very hard. I mean, there's probably, I can remember one kid in particular. I think he was probably planting a quarter of the trees each time. And then, you know, there was others, but you know, they generally they seemed to enjoy it. We had a whole mix of weathers, from snow one day, we had obviously rain, and we had some great days where it was just you know, like a day like today. And I think the kids had a good time. It was all split up between myself and my wife helped out with on the planting days, and Carol was here, Rosie was here. So we almost had like somewhat a supervisor, if you like, in charge of each group, and maybe we had 8 to 10 kids each, something like that. But it went really smoothly. I think I wouldn't, you know, we're looking, hopefully there's a chance for another grant coming up, and if the opportunity comes to work with the school kids again, we'll definitely do it. It was enjoyable.
I think when I came up to see you a few weeks ago, and we walked up that kind of the hill from your accommodation there, the first thing I noticed was just how many birds were on the site compared to how it was when we started planting. What would you say has been the most, I don't know, the most encouraging thing you've seen in terms of kind of bird life and wildlife?
There's been a couple that are really noticeable. Is I mean, almost every evening, actually not so much in the last couple of weeks, but almost every evening, tawny owls, and maybe 2 or 3. I haven't quite figured out what the total number is, but suddenly there's owls here, and what we've been aware of is that we've got a couple of cats, and they've suddenly been bringing in a few more shrews and voles and things. So we're aware that there's just a lot more living on the land than used to, and that we've seen that from the tawny owls, which has been exciting. We've been able to see them. We've gone out with lights, and we've been able to see them in trees and take pictures of them and watch them. And I mean, generally we're hearing them a lot. So the kids have been very excited about that as well. You know, and I've been excited about it. And then also we've had kestrels here all over the summer. I haven't seen them in the last couple of weeks, but we've had 2 or 3 kestrels. So quite almost every day you would come up here, and so I've got the 2 dogs here, but I walk the dogs here, or me and my wife do every morning and later on, and you almost always see the kestrels here. Again, I guess there's just more living here now than used to, so it's starting to support the kestrels coming here. So it's been exciting to see those. We've had deer coming a lot, good and bad, because they're obviously nibbling the trees. But again, nice to see them on the land. So they're often here very early in the morning. So if you're up at first light, there'll be normally a couple of deer here. I mean, we've got tree covers on them, and so they're sort of nibbling down a lot of the bushes a little bit. The taller tree trees, I don't think they can quite get to them, but the sort of the hawthorn and the other thorns, they tend to be nibbling a bit, and it's nice to see them. I mean, they were never here before, so really nice to see those as well. We had a fox, and a really big fox as well. So I'm not a fox expert, but it was a big fox. It was so I'm guessing maybe a male, but just on its own. And when we walked up here, it was just jumping through the grass. I think it was trying to catch something, you know, as we were watching it. Again, I mean, all of those things we've never seen here before. We've heard owls before. I've never seen a kestrel over the land, and I've never seen deer here and a fox. And really that's the last 12 months. And that's only sort of, you know, a year and a half, 2 years on from putting the trees in.
I know you were saying before that you've got some plans for the future of the woodland. You're starting to hopefully get a grant to plant up a little bit a little bit further down. Would you kind of like to, I don't know, make your pitch now, or kind of explain?
Yeah, what I thought that would be useful while I'm here is, so I'll just change the camera around. So so this is obviously the bit that's planted, and I think on the video you heard me talking about a bench, and you'll see we've got the bench going out looking over the Howgills, and our house is down there, and then you've got the hill going up onto the fell. So this is the upper bit of the land. And then what we're hoping to do, I'll just walk over here a little bit. So you should be able to see further down, then you've got the field here on the left, field on the right, and then you've got a lower field. We're gonna, that very bottom field, there's gonna be quite, hopefully quite intense planting there. So most of that is gonna be filled with trees. It's quite wet down there, so we're probably looking at a slightly different tree mix as advised by Carol. And then we're also looking to put in a couple of I suppose, I don't know what you'd call them, but maybe like a 30-meter square of trees, and a few of those in each of these areas of land here. So we're still going to have a few sheep here, but there's going to be a bit of fencing to contain them further. And then, but we're going to put some trees in here as well. So I mean, what we've really noticed with the birds is they, and Mike, I think you advised me, it was a big group of stone chats, but you just really notice them flying from tree to tree in a big group of birds. And we started just thinking a bit more about how do we just link up the land, and maybe even if we do have some sheep in some of these fields, that there's actually a lot more trees in there as well, that hopefully, you know, I suppose a long way in the future, the animals could potentially use to shelter under. But we thought also just for the wildlife, just to, I suppose, to make the land more interesting. But really then we don't really have just a plain field, which we don't really want. I suppose even if we've got the animals there, it'd be nice to have some trees in as well.
Oh, looks good. Darren, obviously you're aware that we won some IOCA funding not so long back, where we're actually, you know, going to be trialing alternatives to plastic tree guards. You know, we can see there's quite a few plastic tree guards on your site there. I know me and yourself had a conversation about the fact that you'd had to go at removing a couple, and then the deer had come in and had eaten your trees. So obviously, you know, you do need some sort of protection there. Are you sort of thinking of planting some of those new trees with some of the alternatives?
If possible, yeah. I mean, yeah, we'd love to. I think it's I think I was probably a bit naive from when we first planted the trees, and had thought, as things got blown over and things, I thought, well, actually, I don't think there's too much harm with taking some of these tree guards off. And I think a few months after that, really then start to see some of the damage that the deer had caused. So I think they are necessarily, certainly here. I think I just can't see how you can get around not having them now that we've got the deer coming. It's a challenge, but I'm really pleased that there are going to be some alternatives, and really pleased to be testing them. And when it's I suppose anyone going down this route, I think it's something to be aware of, is that there is maintenance involved. You know, I think especially here, it's quite exposed here. So exposed, and the land is quite wet. So I suppose the land is soft, and we get a lot of wind. So you quite often get tree guards on an angle, or being blown over, or they're snapped. So there's always a bit of maintenance anyway. But I think I'm very keen to see what the alternatives are made of, and whether there's, you know, different types. But I mean, I think we always looked at this, that we'd love to be testing things here, and so really pleased that you'd won that award. I think it was amazing, actually. I was watching it, sort of the votes going up, thinking whether you were going to make it or not, and there was some really incredible other projects on there. So I think it's amazing that you won that project, and yeah, would be really pleased to be a part of it if that's an option.
Thank you, Darren. I've just got one question from Benji, who asked about what species of tree that you planted there.
Okay, Benji, I'll try. And so we've got
I've dropped you in it there, Darren, sorry.
So we've got hawthorn, we've got blackthorn, we've got hazel. Hazel's probably the one that hasn't done quite as well. I think in the wetter areas, and this is just my from sort of monitoring, I think the hazel haven't done so well in some of the wetter areas. But look, we've got, so that's some of the thorn we've got. Then we've got quite a lot of rowan. And if I'm getting these wrong, you have to say, I think these are alder. So we've got a few of those, and this is quite a wet bit of land here. The other species that we did try and plant that didn't do so well was Scots Pine. I don't know why, but they just didn't seem to work, and I suppose we've just taken that as something to learn from, and we're not going to try and put any more in. But that seemed to be the Scots Pine, whereas the hazel, some have done really well and some haven't. That seemed to be wet or dry land. The Scots Pine seemed to be, we tried about 7 different areas to plant in, and none of them worked. And we've done that in 2 separate lots of planting, because actually we were really keen on the Scots Pine, but they just didn't seem to take. So Scots Pine, we won't be sort of pressing ahead with any more of those. There are then, apart from those, they're probably like the main trees. There's a whole host of other trees that we had in smaller numbers. I think we had a couple of lime, some crabapple, some bird cherry, and there is a few more, but the rest were generally in smaller numbers.
Okay, that's brilliant, Darren. Many thanks for your time. And I did expect to be speaking to you behind your desk in your office. So for you to actually chance the 4G signal in Sedbergh and head out onto the landscape was absolutely brilliant. And really appreciate your time. And yeah, if you want to hang on, we'll just be interested to see if there's any other questions.
Yeah. Well, I will go back inside, but I will. I'll hang on if there's any questions, or if people had other questions and wanted to email through, I'm happy to get back to them.
Thank you. Go and get warm.
All right. See you later.
Cheers, Mike. Cheers, Darren, if you're still around. Lindsay, I don't know if we've had many more questions in there. I saw one from Benji about the alternatives to tree guards. Perhaps we could, I know, David, obviously you've mentioned there's a lot of, it was sort of not a simple answer, but whether Carol could expand. I think Carol's here. Carol, or Mike, if you could perhaps just touch on what we might be looking at trialling this winter, and what the options are in regards to alternatives to the plastic tubes. Is Carol there?
Yeah, do you want me to take that, Mike? Yeah, Mike's done.
Yes,
please, Carol.
Okay, so as Darren was saying, there are cases where the tubes are essential, really. You just can't avoid, the trees would be damaged otherwise. But thankfully, the sort of manufacturers are starting to respond to our demands for other materials, because none of us like the plastic tubes out on the hillside. But it's fairly early days, and we just want to avoid any sort of knee-jerk reaction of people just removing all the tubes immediately, because then obviously we're going to lose a lot of the trees we planted. So this winter, for the first time, we're going to be trialing some of the new products coming on, and there's some that are made of sort of cardboard material with coating. And there's one that's being made from sheep's wool, and there's other types of plastic that are made from natural products. So we're going to be, testing. I think we've got 6 on the list so far that are commercially available that we're going to start testing. And then, as I say, there's new products coming on the market all the time. So we'll definitely be asking Darren if we can trial some on his new woodland. And so we're going to be testing them across various sites that we're supporting this winter and next winter.
Thanks, Carol. If anyone's got any follow-ups there, just pop it in the chat. Lindsay, I'm not sure if we've got any other questions.
There was just one more from Amanda Brewer. Hi, Amanda. Amanda asks how we and any other organisations who want to chip into this have managed to keep their volunteering activities going this year. Might be one for you, Sarah.
Yeah, I'll do my best. So at YDMT at the moment, well, sort of over the past couple of years, we've not had a fixed volunteer programme, but we do try and get our supporters out as much as we can. It's obviously a fantastic way to engage with everybody, as well as being really positive for our work. So obviously with tree planting and woodland maintenance has been tricky this year, getting groups out. So we've managed to get a couple of small groups out from some of our partners. So I think Tarmac and Cars have been out with us. Obviously, it's quite different to last year when we were tree planting and had, I think, 60 people joining us. I can't see that being possible for some time yet. But yeah, we are looking at how we can safely get groups out and get people engaged with the important work that we're doing. On the other side, obviously, is our outreach work. Again, it's all about the risk assessing and seeing what we can do. I don't know, David or Rosie, whether you want to kind of touch on any of that in terms of sort of the future of, obviously there's our volunteering and then the outreach side of things.
No, I think you've answered that, Sarah. We're doing what we can, and you know, we as much as anybody realise the importance of getting out and engaging with nature, which is what we're about, and with each other. You know, we all miss each other, don't we?
Definitely.
I wondered. I'm aware of time. I wondered if there were any more questions for Shanaz. Well, we have her, or anything anybody else wanted to ask us while we're here.
There's an interesting one there from Rachel Benson. Thanks for your question, Rachel. At the moment, quite a lot of the woodlands we plant through grants will be done by kind of contractors. So, you know, individual landowners will have people they prefer to use. They might not like to have lots of groups out. They might like to have just a professional contractor out and doing it that sort of way. We obviously like to get as many groups out as possible. That's something that we're, as David said, something we're really, really keen on. When we had I would say the mini break between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, the sequel, we really did stick to that rule of 6. So there was 1 member of staff and 5 volunteers, as well, with the obvious social distancing and anything else that we needed to do. And it does work. That's something that surprised me when we did some woodland clearance up at Barge Wood in Stainforth, is just how this has become normal. People kind of stay away from each other, even when you're putting redundant tree tubes into a bag. People are still standing 6 feet away from each other without even being told. So, whenever we do get people out, we do a real vigorous risk assessment and make sure that everything's above board and proper briefings and things like that. So I don't know how you feel, David, but I just can't see that changing at all, even when we're all jabbed up and good to go, to be honest with you.
No. I say we'll do our best. We're all trying to duck and dive, aren't we, between the regulations? I'd like to ask one last question, if that's okay, of Shanaz, actually, and I'll turn it around. How can we help ensure that Bradford wins City of Culture? Is there anything we can do to help you? Because I think it'd be fantastic for the area, for the economy of this part of the world.
I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. I'd love to look at, City of Culture is about cultural regeneration, cultural growth, and arts and creativity. And I think I mentioned a little bit about land art and what that looks like. It's also the reason why I shared the 100-year forest project, Katie Patterson's project, with you as well, just to kind of, I suppose it's coming up with ideas that are both beneficial for the landscape, for the Yorkshire Dales, and to involve artists and communities within the Bradford district. It's that. I'm very good at coming up with some pretty mad ideas. And if we win, it's 2025, that gives us enough time to be able to create something pretty substantial. I'd love for us to have a project that has legacy, that has sustainability beyond the 2025 year, and we'll hopefully build some of those links and build on the work that you guys are already doing with with young people in the district, with the communities in the district, with the work that you're doing with tree planting, you know, kind of really looking at the impact of what we leave behind in the landscape, both, you know, that is man-made, but also our own footprints. So I think it's I think it's a conversation, David.
Sure. Well, we like people with mad ideas because we like making mad ideas happen. I think that's why the trust where we are now. We never dreamt we'd be doing half the stuff we do, and it's thanks again to everybody who's on this call. So thank you, Shanaz. I don't know if Mike or Sarah want to wrap up and thank everybody, but my own thanks to all of you, and we hope we do justice to your loyalty and support. Thank you.
Been really lovely to catch up with it. Well, half catch up with everyone. Really lovely to have you all on the call. Lindsay, I think we had a couple. Well, one more question perhaps from Kayla, if you want to kind of take that and lead into what you were going to say.
Yeah, sure. There's a question which actually helps round things off really nicely from Kayla, and she says, are there any campaigns we can join in on for National Tree Week? So it's National Tree Week next week, which generally we do all our tree planting events and get people out and involved and inspired to do more. It also this year coincides with Giving Tuesday. I don't know if any of you have heard of Giving Tuesday. You'll have definitely heard of Black Friday, which is this Friday, sorry, when you can obviously get all your pre-Christmas bargains. So Giving Tuesday is a day of global giving, which basically gives people the opportunity to do something for charity and good causes. So this year for Giving Tuesday, we are trying to get more people involved in giving tree dedications, making donations for tree planting towards our Together for Trees campaign. So our aim this winter is to plant another 40,000 trees so that we can reach our 100,000 target by the end of the winter. So our request to you, if you'd like to get involved with that, is basically just to share our posts on social media and talk about it as much as you can. And we're doing a nice campaign that's all about getting the people in the north more involved in helping plant more trees. So watch out for what we're posting, and we'll send some emails around before then as well, so you know what to look out for.
Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, we'll be sharing a few of the bits and pieces that you can then share on social media and all that sort of thing, those sorts of stuff. Just one final mention, the links to the Low Branthwaite's video and Benji's blog are all in the chat there. We'll try and send them out afterwards if you want to sort of take a look at those. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to send around a guest list of everyone that's been here today. Obviously, it's tricky to chat in the usual ways that we would. If people don't want their name included, please let me know. I think that'll be the easiest way to do it. So yeah, again, I think I'll just round off and say thank you to everybody. We appreciate your support. I think obviously now more than ever we need it, and we're really, really grateful that you're here today to support us and hear